All right, thanks, ladies and gentlemen. I want to get started. The first thing I wanted to do was introduce myself. I'm Erik Strauss. I'm a technology executive. I've been working across the visual effects and entertainment industry for almost 30 years now, places like Sony, Imageworks, and most recently Netflix. I've also been chairing the ASWF Review and Approval Working Group for about a year and a half now, and so this conversation is essentially about sort of what have we been up to and what the next steps are for this particular group. So first, some background. Why does this working group exist? Well, a couple of years ago, the Academy Software Foundation put out a survey and said, hey, industry, like, what is difficult for you? What's a pain? And how can we help? And one of the things that came back from that was that review particularly was a real challenge for the industry. It continued to be a sore spot in terms of the way that people collaborate, the way that people design their workflows, and make successful pipelines is always hinged around review, and that still seemed to be a sore spot. And the two things that came out of that were both a common player. There's not a lot of consensus around the ability to deliver a quality player, and that the fact that standards interchange were really difficult. It was very hard to encode media properly. It was very hard to exchange that media with either your vendor or your client, and we really wanted to get that sorted out. So, a quick Q&A doc link. There's a ton of people, and we've got a lot of speakers today, so we've thrown this link up. If you want to grab that QR code, it's a Google document. You can add any questions in there if you want. If we have time today, we'll answer them live in the room. If not, we'll answer them offline, but we'll try to get back to every question. And if you can see that, folks on the cameras, hopefully that, or on the Zoom, hopefully that works for you as well. 1,000, 2, 1,000. All right, we're going. So what we've been up to. So what we've been doing the past year is trying to define the problem. So sort of what are the things which make up a competent playback system? Well, what are all the attributes that studios and vendors need to successfully work in the space, to effectively sort of define the work that they're looking at and make smart decisions about it? Because ultimately, with review being at the center of workflow and being the thing which both generates tasks and generates revenue, the approvals theoretically generate revenue, people care about this a lot. The other thing is what makes collaboration hard. You know, we've all gone through the pandemic. We've all figured out that working from home is hard. We've all figured out that the distance between not just ourselves, but our customers or our vendors has gotten super complex, and making that process more efficient, making that process more consistent seemed to be another thing the industry was crying out for. So what we've been doing about it is looking at a bunch of demos, trying to figure out what was out there in the world, what made sense, what was successful. We've been working across the community to sort of gather that feedback, gather the best of the intentions and the implementations around these two spaces, around how do we collaborate and how do we and how do we play and experience media together. And out of that, we've come up with a new initiative, as Emily announced. We've come up with, if my slide works, the Open Review Initiative. And this is super exciting for me because it represents a coalition of both companies and the community coming together with a great set of both intentions and code to try to solve this problem. So what you'll hear today is from a collection of speakers who represent both the first three companies who have stepped forward to say we have both resources and code that we'd like to contribute to creating a common player framework, and from companies that have pieces of either this technology around sharing of information and metadata, as well as encoding technologies, all of these things which we can come together as a community and say, these are the bits that make up a competent system. This is the way forward for collaboration, and we hope to build a platform around this where not only just these individual projects thrive and succeed and are beneficial to the industry, but that as a holistic system, we get to a place where anything from the smallest of studios or individual contributors all the way up to the major 1,000, 2,000 player studios in the business can interact with each other, can collaborate on common workflows, can use common tools to facilitate this process of review, approval, and collaboration. So you're going to hear more about that from 5 speakers today. I'm going to introduce them quickly. Sam, Alex, Chaz, Jarrett, Matt, and Cottalango. They'll get a little bit of time to introduce themselves here in the presentation as well. But some great folks and some great companies who have stepped forward here to say, hey, we've got at least a piece of the puzzle to how we want to do this well, and we're willing to share it with the community and collaborate with the community on something we think that can be bigger than each of these parts. So with that, just a little bit of an agenda. We're going to first talk about the standards in Interop chat, which is about how we do encoding and how we exchange metadata in the form of annotations. And then we're going to move on to the player track and talk about this umbrella TSC organization, the companies that are supporting it by delivering code and resources. And then at the end, we'll wrap up with a little bit of a roadmap and sort of what's next for the initiative. So let me introduce Sam Richards. He's up next.
Hi. So I'm just briefly going to just touch on some encoding guidelines docs that I've started putting together. This is still a work in progress. And we're mainly focused on FFmpeg encoding, which is a bit of a minefield. There's a lot of places you can go wrong. So like in this lower left-hand corner, displaying on white isn't the best thing, but that was the slide template. But if you can see that the default FFmpeg conversion is drastically different to the PNG version. So trying to come up with recommendations so that if you're encoding to a QuickTime from PNGs, we give you guidelines on this is where you can go wrong, and this is why you might choose to have different settings to the encoding profiles. Also, beyond just actual encoding, if you're trying to display your QuickTime in a web browser, there's a lot of places you can go wrong. A lot of the web browsers actually will attempt to do their own color space conversion. A lot of the time they'll sadly get it wrong. So we're trying to really just document like all the potential pitfalls that you might have in either doing web review or review using any of the applications that we're about to talk about. So we have a starting point of a set of documents to describe that. This is definitely still a work in progress. There's a number of people in this room who have been helping us enormously in coming up with these guidelines. We've definitely focused on color fidelity, and there isn't always the right answer. So we're trying to document like what do all the settings mean, and why you might want to choose different settings. We are in the process of moving that repository to the Accounting Software Foundation, so that should probably happen in the next month or two, but hopefully this link should still work regardless. For future plans, we're in the process of developing a Docker container and a test suite so that as future versions of FFmpeg or other encoding applications come out, we've got a way of testing how do we go from different source imagery through some sort of color encoding and come up with like a QuickTime movie that we might want to use for review. So right now we're mostly focused on H.264 and a little bit of ProRes, but we definitely want to explore other ones, and we definitely want to start looking at HDR, which is a little bit of a black art to anyone that's started looking in that area. Additionally, further down the road, we'd like to explore how do we stick other metadata into the QuickTime file. Like a pet peeve of mine is it's super annoying whenever you load up a QuickTime file and it tells you everything starts from frame 0, when that original frame may be something quite drastically different. That type of metadata is always something that should be somehow in that file, and there is definitely a framework for doing it. So we want to try and define what that standard is and try and get as many of the other applications using that. And that's it for me. So I'd like to introduce Alex Santos, who's you hear us, Alex?
Yes, yes, I'm here.
Oh, brilliant. Are you going to? All right.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. Hello, everyone. um, so, yeah, I'd like to introduce you a bit about what is Open Annotation IO. Yes, thank you for changing slide. If we can go to the next slide. So, yeah, basically traditional annotation that we probably all of us deal with. You can find them in printed books and schemas and pictures and videos in physical medias as well. It's not just, annotations are pretty much everywhere. And we deal with it not just in productions, but also on, daily uses. Just a post is an annotation. Now, with open annotations, basically the attempt is to recreate and extend the functionality, adding this new layer of interactivity on top of any creative media. So the next slide. And I lost myself here. Okay. Let's see. Okay. So basically, open annotation the goal is to allow anyone to annotate anywhere, being on PDF, on a timeline, a video, an image, a 3D model, an audio stream, in a raw data, and also to basically link these and share these annotations, and also to track these annotations from forward and backwards, and also to allow actually to share and rediscover annotations. So the next slide. Yeah, so now I just wanted to give you a better understanding of what open annotations and where we came up with this idea and the foundations of it. So basically, one of the key things to start is about context. Right now, if we think about how this current system we have to make annotations, basically, for sure, like you can have a context of I'm drawing something for this shot, or on this area of the screen or on this frame. But as soon as you start to have like A, B on the screen, you're using a different color space on a different aspect ratio, and so on and so forth. And the more you have this variable, the more actually you lose the context. So if I'm looking at something visually now, and you guys are looking at me there, for sure you're on different sides of the screen and so on and so forth. So basically, I can annotate my screen. You can see the annotations, but maybe it's it's out of screen, or it's placed in a place that doesn't make much sense for you. So this is pretty much so everything is based on this idea of trying to focus the context, trying to find the context for the annotation. Now basically it's OIO. Basically, what it does is to provide an extendable way to create this model around contexts, and to basically in a way that actually you can transport it between different systems. The next slide. Now, so how we do this? We created basically OIO. Basically, is like a graph. We're all used to use like a node graph system for reading asset creations or for compositing anyway. But the thing is, like, what we thought is like, well, it'd be cool to create kind of a language to describe annotations, and to make it the easiest way possible, in a way that actually we can have elements that are composable, and so we can create really like structured graph of items inside of annotation. So we started from the basic concept where what annotations do is our connected resources, and basically the basic two things that it's in annotations. There is a body, so it can be your scribble, can be you put a point somewhere in space on a 3D object like a pin, and then a target. And the target clearly can be a clip, can be an image, can be even a segment of that clip. So this is basically the basic concept. Clearly, like there are way more nodes inside this graph. We have like selectors. So basically that allows to define an area inside the target that, for instance, can be a selector, a frame range, it's a selector, or it can be a spatial selector, can be, you know, on this quadrant or in these coordinates. But we can also have selectors that are really more targeted to things like that. You can see, for instance, if you have a USD and you have layers, we could create a USD selector that basically allows you to go through a path of inside all the layers to get to the specific layer locations to where you want to drop your annotation. So, anyway, I don't want to go into my details of this. We publish a documentation online. I want to just give the next slide. So I want to just give you an idea of where we are with this. So we published a documentation this January. While we are presenting now more details about AheadIO. We are keeping documenting and also adding more discussions during this year about the standard and how we want to model it. And we are aiming to, by the end of the year, in January, to have basically an import and export library. It will be first in C++. And, we already have a Python implementations, but that's not public yet. But and then on Q2, keep integrating with more tools. And last, but I mean, this is the open discussions that we are having with the review group is to the drawing engine part of this. So we really like have a system ourselves that allows to draw in, and other companies are also have other drawing engines. So the first thing we're going to do, and this is happening in the next couple of months, is to publish a schema for basically allow to transport these drawings across various drawing engine, and hopefully in 2023 maybe open source our drawing engine, or you know, some sort of details of how we imagine a drawing engine to interface then with Open Annotation AheadIO. The next slide, and I'm done with this, with the presentation. Yeah, I want just to you can find more details if you scan this link to on the website about Open Annotation AheadIO, and yeah, that's about it. Thank you. I would like to
Currently, we use 14 different image viewers around the business. And I do have a statistic. I think we launch an image viewer 400,000 times a week, right? So with that sort of breadth of users, we obviously have, you know, an enormous variety of review scenarios. And so the objective of creating essentially a single new playback system to conquer them all, as it were, and to use with all of our teams is obviously pretty challenging. But we have kind of whittled it down to, you know, key features that we think all of our users need. So we should be able to display any image format, freely organize your media as you like, so an arbitrary playlist, subset, contact sheets, and so on. Needs a multi-track nonlinear timeline. It's not intended as an editor, but it should represent a timeline, and that's using OTIO. You should be able to add notes and annotations freely to any media and to timelines. High resolution, high bit depth, high frame rate, that's crucial. We're targeting, at the moment, I think, 2 streams of 4K at 60 frames a second. That seems to be working pretty well. We will discuss 8K, I guess, in the future, unfortunately. Synchronized sessions for multiple users. We have users all around the world. Obviously, we want arbitrary number of people to be able to review media in the same session and control that session, edit, organize playlists, and so on. Pixel streaming, we think this is a really interesting idea. We're all used to, I'm sure, using synchronized sessions where both parties need the media at both ends. We'd like to introduce a feature where if one user doesn't have the media, we can just pixel stream the media to their instance of the application. So they still have full control over the application, can still interact freely with it, but they don't have to have the media local. Push and pull from any database. We have 2 at Dneg that we use significantly, Shotgun and a homebrew called Ivy. So arbitrary database interaction is crucial. Flexible metadata. We don't know what metadata we might want to store, so at the moment we're just attaching JSON dictionaries as payloads to all the media items. That could be to clips or timelines and so on, so you can inject any metadata you like into it. Linux, Mac, and Windows builds, that's crucial. Our teams use all 3 extensively. iOS and other sort of mobile devices, that's maybe something for the future, probably more of a sister application that synchronizes with it, but has some slightly different features that are more focused on those types of devices. And then a C++ plugin framework and Python API. So you can fully control the application through the API. It can run in a headless mode, and obviously plugins to help integrate with your pipeline. So the basic philosophy of the application was always that it should be open sourced. This is quite new to Dneg. I think we have contributed to some projects in the past, but it's not a big focus for us. This is a big shift for us. We definitely want to start contributing much more to the open source community. So this product was designed with that in mind. And that, of course, forces us to engineer it in a way which is very Dneg agnostic, which is not familiar to us. We tend to write tools for our teams to use. So I guess we realized we needed a product that was, out of the box, a fully formed review tool, irrespective of any Dneg business logic. And obviously then integrate with our pipeline through those plugins and the API. So we want to make extensive use of open source libraries. We are using all of these ones currently. Obviously, hopefully in the future, as Open Annotation IO matures, we would hope to integrate that into the system too. And we're extremely proud to be part of the Open Review Initiative. We're one of the contributing teams to that, and we'll see where that group goes, but we're extremely committed to providing a tool set that's useful for the community. So with our sort of broad range of users, the application needs to sort of be, I guess, not too scary for some of those. We expect our directors to use this, maybe editors, could be anybody. Really important that it's sort of user-friendly, doesn't overload you maybe with kind of pro features, at least in a simple layout like this one. But then at the same time is configurable so you can have access to much more advanced features to help with more pipeline-oriented review scenarios. So our timeline at the moment is we've been developing and testing for about 2.5 years. We're about to release it internally as version 1 in August, a very scary moment. A lot of core features are already in the application right now, so the playback engine is pretty optimized. That's working very well. We have notes and annotations, which are currently embedded, but we can publish those out to any database through the plugins that we've developed. So Shotgun, for example, and Ivy, as I mentioned earlier. It's got comparison tools, A/B tools, and grid mode, and so on. It's OCIO v2 compatible and has already an OTIO backend, but no front end for that yet. We're currently working on that. And so we'll release that internally to our teams in a couple of weeks. And then at the end of the year, we've committed to open sourcing the code base wherever it's at. We hope at that point to have the multi-track timeline in, plus a number of other features that will be useful to people. And then beyond that, there's a whole bunch of features that we're currently thinking about, we're planning, and we're in discussions with a number of other companies about maybe contributing to. Features we know we need, like sync sessions and so on, but there's obviously a lot of great expertise out there in the world, so we're hoping to leverage that too. And yes, in December, we will be hosting it on the Academy Software Foundation's GitHub repo. So available for everyone to play with then. So I'll wrap it up there, but if you'd like any more info, I'll be in room 302 tomorrow, and always available to answer any questions. Thank you.
Hey everyone, so my name is Matt Sivertson. I am the Chief Architect of EMS over at Autodesk. And so today we're really excited to announce that in conjunction with the ASWF, we're going to be open sourcing RV into the Open Review Initiative alongside the contributions from Dneg and Sony. So we're very excited to be collaborating together. So RV is a production-proven player, obviously used broadly throughout the industry. It's a SciTech Award winner, and its broad set of review capabilities is driving review workflows around the world today, both in theater and desktop settings. So it's very well established. And critically, it's designed from the beginning to be extensible. So it's ideal for integrating into your own pipelines. So we're very excited to open source this, to start collaborating with the community and see what sort of new features and capabilities can be possible by working together. But of course, with the Open Review Initiative, it's more than about any one feature in any one application. This is really about uniting into contributing all of the code into a single open source framework that can get to a unified framework that can enable new possibilities. So we're very excited to collaborate both with ASWF and with Sony and Dneg and whoever else is going to be contributing into this code base and developing this into a framework into the future that will bring it all together. And we're also very excited because this will allow our existing customers to contribute to the future of review workflows themselves. And of course, we do know that as a product, we have customers who are relying on us to support RV today and to use some of the licensed codecs and features that we can't necessarily open source. So we will be continuing to release this as part of the ShotGrid product. So that will not change, and we'll continue to support it, but we're going to refactor it so that the commercial version uses the open source core that we're going to be releasing into the open source community. And we can all benefit from the new framework that we build together going forward. So that's our brief announcement. We're very excited to start collaborating with everybody and to building the future of review workflows together. So next up, we will hand it off to Kot, who I believe is online. Is that right? Okay. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Hopefully my audio and video is working. Happy to meet you all virtually from LA. My name is Cottalango. I am a software architect at the Sony Pictures Imageworks. Let me present to you about AheadIO. Next slide, please. So AheadIO is a proprietary tool we use at Imageworks. It's used by pretty much all the artists at our company. It's one of our oldest tools that we have been using. It turned 25 last year. It's not the code base. It has been rewritten 4 times already, and it considered legacy because of all the features that have been added over the years. One of the reasons it's also very successful internally is because of the rich ecosystem of the plugins. Many of them written by artists themselves just to make their lives better. Some of the distinguishing features are a centralized sync server that makes it easy for artists to communicate with each other in real time. It can support upwards of 100 people. And also a very seamless integration with our editorial department, where the artists can see the latest cuts and compare with their working version and so on. Next slide, please. It works pretty well in general. People are pretty happy, but we have been thinking about its future. Especially when it comes to some of the big features that people have been asking, as well as some of the performance issues we are starting to see. We are seeing on the front-end side, animators using it as almost like a 2D drawing tool. And then on the back-end side, writers and creatives using it almost like a mini DI suite. And we are having to efficiently broadcast this in real time to everyone. And that's starting to see some of the performance limitations of the current code base. And the plugins have become almost a victim of their own success. Sometimes they do so much stuff, they start affecting the playback system. And some other challenges include things like exchanging annotations easily, something that the standards track is taking up on. Since it's a proprietary system, every time we have to convert into some other format to exchange with other people. It's a Linux-only player right now, but people have been asking for Mac playback, Windows playback, and web-based playback, and so on. And as I said before, yeah, some of these requests are kind of hard to do with the current code base. Next slide, please. So last year, I had opportunity to come and talk about basically reinventing our code base based on open source module. So the idea is we don't want to completely rewrite from scratch. We want to bring in all the good parts about ItView, many of the workflows that we developed, a lot of the UIs that we developed, which we want to bring in, but maybe change a lot of internals so that they are built based on more modern code bases and open source modules. It's already using some of the open source modules, things like OpenImageIO, OpenColorIO, and so on. But we want to take it a lot further, where everything is built on open source, and the rediscovered ItView itself becomes open source player at some point. One of the main modules that was missing was the playback engine. So that's where our interest with the Dneg Xstudio code base was very interesting. Next slide, please. So Dneg was gracious enough to give us an evaluation copy of their Xstudio code base. So we played with it. We tested our theory of how can we take a playback engine developed from outside else and then create a ItView skin top of it, right? So we were able to do that successfully. Xstudio, which is written in C++, does the playback part of it, and then all our ItView UI written in Python code in a multi-process architecture, right? So they are completely isolated from each other, so that our idea of doing anything you want on the UI doesn't really affect the performance. And we did a benchmark between what we currently have with the new system. And we discovered that this prototype performed almost 40% better than our current player, which is a validation of our idea that this might work. Next slide, please. So now that we have more toys to play with from Autodesk, we want to continue with our experiments, maybe bring in more technologies, try to see all the relevant parts that's applicable to us. And also, since the sync server code is, we have a lot of experience with it, it has served us really well. Seeing if it is something that we can make it generalized so that it can work with other third-party applications also. And it's something that we can open source in the future. We don't have a timeline yet because a lot of that will depend on how the evaluation goes on, but we hope to publish a timeline soon. That's all I had. Thanks for listening. Thank you.
All right, folks, I'm going to wrap this up real quick, and I think I'm standing in the way of your coffee break. One last bit just to talk a little bit about what the initiative's next steps are. So we've built this very nice high-level timeline to talk about it. Right now, we're in the sort of announce the program phase. We're talking about we've got all these contributors, we've got all this code, we've got a lot of work to do to think about how all these pieces fit together. As we move forward through the fall, that work is going to start to happen. The work on the Autodesk side, the work on the Dneg side is going to continue to establish the places where they can get to a point where you saw sort of, for instance, on Chaz's deck around where the code will drop. With that, we need to have a good, long, hardy architecture discussion. Let's talk about what the shape of this looks like, what pieces are the right pieces, how does it fit the community's needs. That's where we're going to need all of your help, as well as the help of the engineering teams and the contributors that are already signed on to this project. So if you've got strong opinions about that stuff, that will be the time to exercise them, and we're excited to hear from you all. Coming out of that, we're hoping that we'll have sort of a more strategic high-level plan as to, now that we sort of know where we're going, we'll have identified a whole bunch of gaps, we'll have identified the places where we think we have the right answer, some of the places where we think we don't, or even some of the places where we think we need to reach further out into the community and say, hey, does anybody have something like this that might fit this problem space? We're not insular in the way that we think that these three companies and just this code is going to solve the problem of having a really robust conversation about how review works. So we'll also be looking to the community for that. And then so hopefully by the end of this year, we'll have that generalized roadmap published to say, this is what we think we have, this is what we think we need, this is where we're going, and we can start to marshal some of the resources around making that stuff possible. So that is it for us. We're super excited about it. We welcome any and all folks who are willing to jump in and have this conversation with us. We know it's a big, unwieldy beast, and we're looking for as much support as we can to make this successful. I'm not sure we have time for Q&A, but I can take
maybe just like one question.
One question? Otherwise, load up the Q&A doc, and I can respond to it offline. It's available on the internet, so you can see all your answers there, and I'll tag everybody once I respond to things. All right. Thank you.